Aloha everyone, this is Travis Liggett, Master of Science, 240 votes, placed 6 out of 10, the recent mayoral competition. Not bad for someone who had a 69-day candidacy and indeed probably had a blood infection the whole time. Maybe wouldn't have decided to run if I wasn't a little bit in that auto-inflammation loop. But yeah, I'm here to testify about this idea of rezoning condos in Maui. So I have some information to share that would make that clear to be a very bad idea. So I was the technical administrative project manager, technical project. I managed a project down there to develop a regional system for 3.5 years. And part of that was to produce, in cooperation with a very good firm, some drawings of the systems down there. And what we found is that the injection wells are very close to the shoreline. And in fact, I looked at the monitoring data. And in fact, there is very little of that. And indeed, it has not been monitored for things like pathogen indicators in any of the condos since somewhere between 1997 and 2020. I checked on this twice, 5 years apart, got the same answer. And in 2020, with the Supreme Court decision, NPDES permits, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, would have required discharge permits, and that decision said basically one thing: if it goes in the ocean, even indirectly, it has to meet the ocean water quality standards. And the last data set that we have for those condos, some of them are thousands of times higher than the Supreme Court decision would indicate is mandated for nutrients. For pathogens, it's all over the place down there. And indeed, also, none of the tourist attractions that are ostensibly what we call ecotourism, none of them have been compliant with anything near wastewater compliance. And we're talking like the harbor in their wisdom, DOBOR, built a brand new membrane bioreactor plant at the Maui Harbor in 2012. Are there any ecotourism operations that operate out of the harbor? Many. Pacific Whale Foundation, Maui Marine Resource Council, and the whole lot of them appear to have been discharging into a renegade system. They never even applied for permits. And they improperly, according to my UIPA requests, they improperly just turned off a valve on those pesky injection wells and started using leach fields. Wonder why they would do such a thing. Well, there's a loophole in the state law. The hole has to be deeper than it is wide to require an underground injection control permit, right? Why would you need a permit for something going into groundwater? Well, yes, it's below the line where anyone would seek drinking water. However, what happens when you don't need an underground injection control program permit anymore? You don't need to submit monitoring. Of course, there's no permit. And so indeed, they were so kind as to do the minimum monitoring for a wastewater permit, even though they didn't apply for any. And it's not like they didn't know, right? It's not like the DOH didn't notice. No, the DOH noticed. They sent them a letter in 2015. They said, hey, we heard you built a plant down there. You need a permit for that, right? Well, I talked to the wonderful person from DOBOR who started in 2012. And I said, hey, did you see that letter in 2015? He's like, I never saw that letter. Kind of beside the point, because it seems like they would have applied for permits. But don't worry, the lady from DOBR said she respectfully disagrees that they have no permits. They still don't have them. And I really want you to note, they seem to have arbitrarily changed the geometry of their discharge to avoid monitoring. But that's not all. The operator, in his infinite wisdom, recognized that, well, the plant's built too big. We've got all those porta potty chemicals in there, and of course, very little biology can persist in porta potty chemicals from the boats. Again, Pacific Whale Foundation, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council, reef restoration missions. So what did they do to solve that? And by the way, it appears maybe they did not get a permit because the treatment plant was built too large in volume for the small discharge in the harbor compared to the volume. And so they weren't able to meet ostensibly their total suspended solids or other metrics required by the minimal wastewater branch permit monitoring. And so their solution to not being able to sustain the biology was to import to the harbor uncut sludge from a municipal plant. They charmingly called it seed culture. I really want you to catch that. The operator solved the problem of an oversized plant and chemicals by importing raw, uncut sludge from a municipal plant to the Maui Harbor, where Pacific Whale Foundation was doing whale tours, and Maui Nui Marine Resource, I can hardly say it. Maui Nui Marine Resource Council was doing reef restoration missions, embarking. But the reef down there is fine, right? The reef's fine, right? No, it's not. 75% in 1995. My calculations put it at less than 2% in, ooh, yeah. That's a good moment for the lights to go out. Let's try that one again. Okay, yeah, that black screen, that was the moment. I was down there in 2010. I actually felt something in the air. It was the death of the reef. So my analysis says that that reef is what's called a Superfund site by the EPA definition. Maalaea Reefs, Superfund site by my initial analysis. Super fun, right? That's not all. The Maalaea Triangle, where the Maui Ocean Center is, this is not personal. It has nothing to do with any person. It's technical analysis. Oh, Lord, help me on this one. Turns out the Maui Ocean Center was sneaking animal waste into the Maalaea Triangle wastewater plant, as in without a permit. Why would I know that? Well, I did some MPDES permit work. In fact, I led the development of the first flow diagram of the Maui Ocean Center, 2018. I'm the first one that wrote down it was going over there. But when they had to have their UIC permit for the treatment plant, all they had to do was hand that operator my flow diagram. They didn't do that. The person in charge of the MPDES, we use her code name, Robin Socks, just didn't ask. The signatory, Robin Knox, said goodbye to the discharge. Bye, have fun at college. The signatory for both permits gave a different set of data to the two permit teams, compartmentalized them, gave them different sets of data, which functionally concealed it. Don't know if it was intentional. But that's fine, right? They're disinfecting that, right? Yes, they are. With chlorine disinfection. Very harmful to reefs. It harms denitrifying groundwater bacteria. But here's what's scary about that. Chlorine disinfection does not cover an entire class of pathogens called non-tuberculosis mycobacteria. It's the non-tuberculosis form of mycobacteria, which includes tuberculosis and a little thing that the esteemed member from Molokai probably knows about, leprosy. It's associated with fish sores, which are known to very strongly impact reefs. Non-tuberculosis mycobacteria are almost universal in aquarium and aquaculture operations. And indeed, in 2023, something like 68% of the otherwise healthy fish, according to their own reporting, introduced into the displays, not the animal hospital, the displays, 68% of those otherwise healthy fish perished in under a month or so, according to their data. Here's the thing. It's cited in an article that pathogens and bacteria were involved. Mycobacteria, bacteria that's like myco, or fungus that likes to be cold, like the ocean. So here's the thing. After discussing the almost universal presence of those pathogens, the very high mortality rates in the aquarium, in the displays, there's a little bit of wind right now, a little bit of a storm. They were discharging secretly the animal waste up to 1,000 gallons per day into the Triangle Treatment Plant that was discharging into 2 injection wells, UM 1954. They were using chlorine disinfection, which sadly I found in very basic research has a very limited coverage for many species of NTM. So the disinfection method being used has very limited coverage for many forms of these species. And they are, by the way, most prevalent in this place than in any other state of the so-called United States. It's very prominent here, NTM. It's kind of everywhere, and especially in systems that are importing specimens from all around the world. Again, 68%. Hundreds of fish lost just in or around 2023. Are you following me? That these pathogens that are potentially killing nearly all of the healthy fish introduced into the displays is being sent through a system without a permit. And the disinfection method being used does not cover those species in many cases. Confirmed by a Hawaii-born young lady who is the leader of a lab on the continental U.S. that specializes in this stuff. But I'm sure DLNR is on this, right? Well, they reported that reef has total system collapse, 2014. They did. And then they made the very, very smart choice of moving their office into a building in the harbor that was discharging into the renegade harbor plant. The DLNR, the people who wrote the report about total system collapse, moved their offices. You can't make this up. I have receipts for all of this. They moved into the harbor and started contributing to the illegal discharge. And by the way, they're also using chlorine at the harbor. But I'm sure DLNR is on top of this, right? So I talked to a ridge to reef specialist who I'd been referred to because people had to check whether or not my data on Flush Aware was accurate. So I went to this nice lady, and she said, yeah, I know about this because of your website. So, DLNR. And I said to her, do you have any data on fish sores down there? She made a joke. She's like, yeah, well, not really, because you'd have to have fish to be able to monitor for fish sores. Again, total system collapse. Total system collapse. And then, super fun site, super fun. And then I heard the nice lady testify who lives in Malaya. She said she had tragically dealt with some sort of malignancy. cancer. And I've known for a long time that there is a relationship or connection, whether or not it's causal. Cancer and malignancy often follows infections. And I asked my infectious disease expert, I said, what is the connection? I said, explain it to me in the minimum number of words. She said, infections cause inflammation. Inflammation increases the numerical quantity of cell division and cell turnover. And every time you do that, you're introducing the roll of the dice that there's going to be a mutation, and a subset of those become malignant. And by the way, you've got inflammation going on. The system is under strain from the infection that you have causing the inflammation. And that reduces the body's ability to accurately replicate code in your DNA, increasing the probability of mutations. And then if you do have a mutation, the same immune system that is geared up to fight the infection is also meant to fight malignancies. It's a perfect storm. And so the two condos that I see on the list for H3 and H4 are associated with a gentleman, if my memory serves me, is some very high-ranking oil executive from, I think it's a nonprofit, I don't know, Alaska Petroleum Producers Association, former president of NBA, who, as far as I know, was the organizer of the sea level rise presentation. Irony? Anyone? Irony? And I believe, if my records are right, the other one on the list is the current president, who is a former manager of facilities for the state of Alaska. I think they know each other. What do you think she wants to manage? But, yeah. So, oh, there's more. So I turn out to have 6 genetic mutations. 3 of them very significant. 1 immune impairment, autoinflammation, and 2 eczema genes. Immune impairment, bubble boy. Autoimmune, boiling blood, double eczema. What bubble? What bubble? And yeah, I had recovered from a major spine surgery and had become a very, very enthusiastic boarder. In the, gosh, lose track of time. What on earth year was that? Okay, that had to be 2011. I was waking up in the morning, checking the surf report. Very interested. Mostly down here. Oh, keep up. Turtles, mist, rainbows. Beautiful people. 7:30 a.m. I don't need to explain it to anyone who knows what I'm talking about. And I, even back then, did I throw in the part that 42 years inspired by the reefs of Maui, 7 universities, 10 years at NASA. I'm strategic. And so I had a meeting with some Spencers about some land, about a regional Matalaya wastewater plant back in 2011. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go down there with my friends, try out boarding down there. And I remember going down there, and great waves, but it was like murky. Didn't look right. I don't think it smelled, but it looked like it smelled. And I just remember thinking, ooh, this isn't good. This is not a good feeling. I got really sick. Couldn't really put a finger on it, but just felt really ooky, and went to a cafe, Wailuku, and one leg was in the sun, one wasn't. The leg in the sun started to swell. That was January 2012. Been swollen ever since. Lymphedema. What? Permanent lower extremity swelling. Turns out that double eczema gene is also an impairment of epithelial cells, which line every vascular system. So quadruple, triple, I don't know, I've lost track of the whammies. And I was so sick, had to have a major surgery, which kind of managed it, but permanently disabling. I really want you to let this sink in. I swim there a couple hours. Was in the water for a long time down there once, and am permanently disfigured. I've never enjoyed boarding again. I've adapted, but I miss having an active life. I can't really get too hot. No hot tubs. Like, I've lost so many parts of my physicality to lymphedema. It started with what appears to have been an infectious process that was perfectly linked in time with an event down there. One-time boarding. Yeah, I'm one out of some millions of a combination of genetic mutations. So how many people know about their genetic mutations? Which also can change your susceptibility to malignancy. But that's not all. So I actually took a tour of every plant in Ma'alaya in July of 2023. And at the very end of the day, the operator of the Ma'alaya Triangle plant, as part of my job, we were talking about backup disposal methods, and I was curious to see the plant. Took a tour of the plant. Somehow, the operator, another dude, just planted me and us next to an aeration basin. I've been talking all day. Hey, I'm immunocompromised because of my edema. Somehow they convinced me to stand next to that bioreactor for over 10 minutes or something. I got covered in what was like a little bit of wet droplets. Aerosolized sludge. Fun, right? And I felt gross. And I got sick again. And I had sores and ended up like little sores on my shoulder where it was exposed on my collar, and woke up, can't make this up, the morning of the wildfire tragedy, out of my skin, sick. And turns out one of my genes has an autoinflammation failure mode where it's like doesn't detect infections until they're beyond low grade, and then it just fires every autoimmune, as in cytokines and adrenals and all of it, like 102 fever and a car wreck, even if you don't really have an advanced infection. And a weird thing is, I can get that response just from someone getting to me emotionally. Isn't that weird? It's a weird gene. So, yeah, woke up the morning of the horrible wildfire tragedy, just sick as a dog. And I have been sick ever since until I'm actually not completely out of it, but just the week of the election, I found a treatment for the out-of-control autoinflammation feedback loop. It's a very interesting treatment, and it has helped so much. Literally, for the first time in 3 years, I feel something like grounded. Not 102 fever, not a car wreck. Ooh, it's a branch, roof. And yeah, that happens to be from exposure to sludge that had that, remember that illegal discharge from the Maui Ocean Center? Turns out it's much higher risk than human waste, which is what the triangle was permitted for, because again, they didn't give that operator the diagram that I led the making of. And that's not all. Sometime later, in an unrelated series of events, I uncovered that injection well permit at the Ma'alaya Triangle was not permitted for animal waste. And very, very respectfully came forward to that person. And I was told it was inconsequential. And I talked to the operator. The operator confirmed they had never been told that there was animal waste going to that plant. I talked to someone who was a party that was talking to the same person about purchasing the entire Ma'alaya mall. That person had not been told that there was a violation, because here's what happened. I respectfully came forward. The NPDES person confirmed that she had never asked to see the permit for the destination of that animal waste. She said, "Can you send that permit to me?" A little late. And yeah, that was frightening, because April of 2025, I think it was the 2nd, that person reported to DOH the illegal discharge. On the 3rd, 20 minutes after I disclosed the permit violation with great concern to a colleague with permission, I was fired with a scary ass text, which has since disappeared from my phone. And what unfolded after that was an absolute nightmare. There appears to have been some structured smear campaign. I was definitively hacked in multiple ways. One of those hackings led to lawsuits, where I have faced the largest law firm on the planet, 6,000 to 7,000 lawyers, if my Google search is correct. And that law firm's direct predecessors were founded in London in the 1790s. Anything happening there in the 1790s? And I was still sick. Did not have any clue about my mutations, and had never, it didn't connect till later that oh my gosh, animal waste. All these mutations, bubble boy, no bubble, boiling blood. And it turns out that my genetic mutation is effectively renders me blind to that NTM. Oh my gosh, there's no place like home. What? And it took me, a year to untangle the mess I was in, because additionally, shortly after I came down with lymphedema, I was distressed, had an out-of-control auto-inflammation feedback loop. I had been sedated out of my mind just to sleep, which, by the way, is immune impairing. Are you following me? I had like 7 immune impairments, something like that. Ridiculous, perfect storm. Still to this day, do not feel I've had a complete infectious disease workup. My entire mayoral campaign was conducted with, looks like a normal skin biota that had infected my blood, because I'm so out of whack with my immune system. And it wasn't until the actual week of the election that I accessed this treatment, which, by the way, it's low-dose naltrexone. 1 milligram of what they give opioid overdose patients appears to be able to break you out of an autoinflammation loop. And that particular gene and that autoinflammation loop are almost invariably misdiagnosed as a mental health condition, because, I call it like the Pulp Fiction moment with the needle, Uma Thurman. It is the most intense thing I've ever endured. And I've just recently broken out of that. Was it yesterday? Gosh, been quite a 24 hours. It's Saturday, 8:29 p.m. In the middle of the storm. Yesterday, I finally accessed the proper IV antimicrobial for my particular out of balance skin biota that has moved into my blood. And I feel clear, grounded, and myself, perhaps for the first time in 3 years. And what has unfolded appears to be some sort of structured campaign. None of those facilities have made any sort of public statement about their permit noncompliance. None of them. They have continued to operate with these ostensible ecotourism operations without any announcement. According to my most recent UIPA response, the Triangle still does not have any valid discharge permits, because, of course, if your NPDES permit says you're sending something from plant A to B and B is not properly permitted, well, that NPDES permit is not valid either. And when I wrote that down in 2018, there were no physical changes happening that I was told about, and all the previous permits said it was going somewhere else. And so that tells me that that facility has never had any valid discharge permits. And again, Superfund site. In 1995, up to 75% coral cover, according to DLNR. DAR. 2010, 2%. That's the context for rezoning condos in Malaya. Here's the legal layer. If you rezone them, your princess and the peeing, the fact that they don't have NPDES permits. And why does that matter in a global legal context? Well, the NPDES Supreme Court decision said if it goes into a body of water, even indirectly, it has to meet the specifications of that navigable body of water. So are there any industries that are pumping stuff into the ground that may go into a body of water? Yes, fracking. Did anyone catch the presence, the prominent presence of a prominent oil industry person in Malaya? An MBA, yes, the president. And so Malaya is kind of like a legal token in somebody's future argument. Their princess and the peeing, the pee. And if H3 and H4 are allowed to pass, then future juries and judges and lawyers will say, well, see, the people of Maui, this didn't bother them much, so why would you be bothered by our fracking going into this river, silly? They don't care, we don't care. It's called a legal precedent. And there's another layer, the very place of the Supreme Court decision, Lahaina. They're fighting that too. Did you know your tax dollars are going to fight improvements in water quality standards going into the ocean at Kahikili? Did you know that? Another legal token. And if our county wins in investing our tax dollars in lawyers who remind me it's 9 p.m. when it's 3 p.m., so that tells me they're on the East Coast. We have a concerted effort by the oil industry and the county of Maui to Princess and the P, the NPDES P. And it's not okay. And here's why it's not okay. Because that nice lady who lives in that condo, I'm a lifetime member of MVA. 3.5 years of no net charge, leading millions of dollars of grant applications. Yeah, I might. It's a defensible statement that I've contributed more to MVA than any other human being. That includes hundreds, if not 1,000 hours from my parents doing reviews, catching stuff that digital reviews couldn't check or catch. And the idea that you would send out an all clear signal down there to tourists and say everything's fine. The nice lady who owns this condo, she's a little bit sick, so she needs some money. So come on, go swim, hurry. It makes no sense. It's also very dangerous. It's not just a legal concern. It is actually materially dangerous. And sure, technically DOH director has the authority to waive those monitoring requirements. But the timing of it matters. Those monitoring requirements started rolling back around 1997, exactly when the triangle went in. And there is a very nice gentleman who informed me that when the triangle went in, there was a catastrophic sedimentation event right in the middle of construction. And then there's an article about when they started the aquarium, they were just killing everything that they put into it. The article says something like it was the solvents or off-gassing of the building of the aquarium. I mean, there are so many whammies down there. And the idea that anyone would send an all-clear signal to human beings to come down and recreate down there, partake in these businesses that, to my knowledge, to this day, still have no proper permitting, and we're not just talking about NPDES. That's underground injection control and wastewater branch. The idea that you legislators would send out an all-clear signal on the legal basis, which is that you're ostensibly saddling the STR owners with the liability of getting their guests sick. You are handing a freebie to the oil industry if you're successful. And here's another layer to it. So this is, do notice that if you are vending services down there, and any consumer could reasonably expect that if they're participating in a happy vacation time or an ecotourism thing, and they have no permits for the wastewater, and it's not just paperwork, it's harmful, and it's not just harmful, it's dead, it's a Superfund site. Whew, that's not okay. And here's why. A little bit of consumer education. If you have purchased an STR night down there since after the Supreme Court decision, so let's say, I think that was March of 2020, check my work. Let's just for safety's sake, from January 1st, 2021 on, if you spent a penny at an STR down there and you put it on a credit card, you could probably call your credit card company and say, this person told me that I was spending my money on a facility that didn't just not have permits, but was actually dangerous to me and my family. You are very, very likely to have the right to very politely ask your credit card company for what's called a fraud chargeback. That's fraudulent, even if the person didn't know. If they don't correct it later when they find out, and they have known this, it's fraud. The same goes for every single purchase made out of any mission, or whatever you want to call it, disembarking from that harbor, if they produce wastewater effluent that goes into that plant. And that includes the big names. The big names, Pacific Whale Foundation. I'm sure they were super cool when I brought this to them, right? I was alarmed. It was a sky is falling moment. I was looking for an ally. What did I get? A strongly worded letter. It was kind of had the energy of, how dare you? How dare you say that Pacific Whale Foundation could harm the ocean? They're like, we don't manage that. They're like, we contract. DOBOR is on top of it, right? Ooh, there's more. The sludge thing, them importing the sludge. They produced the letter that they sent to DOBOR, the DOH. They said, hey, we heard you're importing sludge down there. You know you can't do that, right? And every letter has, did you know violations are $25,000 a day per injection well? I don't know if the gentleman from DOBOR admitted he hadn't seen that letter either, but they certainly didn't cease the practice. When I talked to the operator, he's like, yeah, we're trying to get it down to just 1 truckload a month. Like it matters what they think. The reef is gone. But it gets better. It gets better. Oh my gosh. I'll stop. Say uncle. It's Uncle Travie. Say, stop, Uncle Travie. No, I'm not going to stop. DOH sent another letter to DOBOR 2023. Talk to the nice gentleman. And you know they were so kind as to read that one and respond to it. They said, oh yes, we will get right on top of that. We're going to get that permit. Of course, not of course, maybe you didn't know. It's not permittable in the sense that you have to be able to meet the very low bar of wastewater branch water quality specifications. And this is a certification. It has to do it at the design flow with only effluent from the facility that's serving. So the operator told me, we need the seed sludge, seed stock, I don't know what it was. The sludge from a municipal plant. They're like, well, we need that to meet the specifications of the permit we don't have. They didn't say that, but you now know they didn't even have a permit. So they can't get that specification. It's oversized. It's got all these chemicals in it. So they can't get the certification that says they can meet the water quality effluent specification with the effluent on site. It's unpermittable. So in 2023, DOBOR wrote back a very nice response. Of course, we'll get right on that. wildfire tragedy happened, and that nice gentleman said, we just lost track of that one. Of course, they were taking all the nice people from the Lahaina harbor as like boat refugees, and it remains chaos down there. And as far as I know, business has continued as usual. And there have been rumors that I'm like gonna come down and beat people up down there. They're not rumors, they're court filings. Like I have been, as I have researched it, like targeted like in the most profoundly harmful way that you can target a whistleblower. And all the same people that are taking advantage of the unpermitted systems have joined in. This includes like Maui Marine Resource Council, who I worked with in the irony department to develop flushaware.com, which uncovered that they are not in compliance. And I offered them help to get their permits in compliance. I don't know if they even responded. They certainly didn't take me up on it. They did not take me up on it. And as far as I know, all of those operations have continued down there as though nothing is wrong. And that is the energy that rezoning these properties has. It sends out a signal, business as usual. Well, I mean, it's business as has been happening, but it is not normal. What is going down there is not normal, and I really want you to pay attention to this. It appears that any charge made at the harbor, the first letter was sent out in 2015, so safely. Let's just say January 1st, 2016, and God bless them, due to my efforts, they actually submitted a permit application package for the Ma'alea Small Boat Harbor. You're welcome. I believe that was January of this year. So ostensibly, it is perhaps a defensible statement that every charge made to any commercial operation operating out of the harbor that contributes to that treatment plant, that makes any sort of assertion that they are eco anything from safely January 1st, 2016 to January 1st, 2026. I'm no lawyer. I am not giving you advice, but you may be able to make a strong case to your credit card company or whomever that's in the statute of limitations for commercial fraud or whatever that is, that you would kindly like to have them return your cash, because it's not okay. It's not just paperwork. It's technically harmful. It's reflected in that lack of reef presence. And it's not okay. And the idea that business has gone on as usual and that I have been treated as some sort of aggressor when I am just about the most authentic due diligence person that you can find. And to layer on top of it, that I have been sick from, maybe not from, but directly following the exposure, very sick, have all these genetic mutations. And one of them is an autoinflammation process that looks a lot like severe 24/7 distress. And that has been leveraged against me as a whistleblower. It is the most yuck situation I have ever encountered. And I honestly, in my heart, think a lot of people bet that I wouldn't physically make it. And so I love making it. Love making it and just saying, nice try. I'm available for hugs, but yeah, yuck, right? And so the idea, oh wait, there's more. Member Cook, chairperson of the wastewater committee, similarly in Kihei, no NBDES permit, but for many years I tried to educate him, hey, the effluent leaving the Kihei plant, not disinfected. I finally educated him recently. He called me delightful. I think he has a wonderful heart. He's a good person. He just does not have a handle on this stuff. So any notion in which you would rezone this and say, come to Maui, our beautiful shores, blah, blah. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Cove Park, 68 to 80% of the groundwater entering the ocean, according to one model, Hunt 2007, is this non-disinfected effluent. DOH is being quoted in the newspaper in 2021. Oh, of course it's disinfected. Don't return emails to correct it and let that misinformation stand. I'm not even going to get into Kahului, where they ceased all disinfection in 2018 without any public notice. And the idea that you would rezone those introduces so much risk by further reinforcing this false notion that it's safe. And as the administrative project manager of that project, I can report that sadly, due diligence did not happen from MVA. I was the first to grieve that, but any notion to the otherwise is easily refuted with the documentation record. And I just encourage you, please defer this and let's invest our time, our precious, finite legislative time, into solving actual risks to actual people now. I have solutions that involve philanthropy that could potentially fund the entire system in Ma'alaya, reef-safe ultraviolet disinfection, island-wide, and just get her done. But like, you're wasting our time, you're polarizing our community, and it's yuck, because I think you too have families. And what you're saying, if you pass this, is that you would rather beat me than care about your own families. That is what I hear. And I would not recommend any family member to go swimming in Ma'alaya or Cove Park or Kanaha if they do not have like a genetic workup, no cuts, no pregnant ladies, no kapuna, no very young children. It is a crisis. And the crisis is not just what's happening on the ground. It is the disinformation crisis and the distilled vitriol of the people that have just come for me when I'm just this nerd trying to solve problems. And by the way, I've gotten through this communications from the Ma'alaya Harbor that they are now interested in joining the Ma'alaya regional system. I am talking to donors that could pay for the whole system without a single tax dollar. I developed a model that makes us able to deliver wastewater service in Ma'alaya at the same cost as the county. But so long as disinformation rules, the authorities in our community are designated by corporate billionaire affiliation status, and those of us with due diligence are not even allowed a seat at the table that we built. Ooh, we're going to continue to have problems. And to that nice lady down there in Ma'alaya with the cancer, I can't definitively say that it has anything to do with the ocean. I recommend you get a full exome genetics test. Maybe look for some of my variations. And some of the absolutely lovely people I've met at MVA, I apologize. When I was subject to being fired after doing that whistleblowing, I kind of put everyone down there in one unit. And I know it's more complex than that. And I know that maybe you've been fed some disinformation. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to live and thrive and enjoy this place. And rezoning the unzonable is not the solution. Beware false prophets, as in if you're avoiding $25,000 per day per injection well fines, and making a couple thousand in STR profits, are you really profiting if you're spending that on your medical bills? I don't think so. But yeah, just be careful what you do, because I'm looking at advancing a bill called the NANI Act, Ecosystem Rights. If I'm successful, it's going to be a not so fast moment, because somebody is going to pay for the collapse of that reef. And I have written that law so that it could be split between maybe the foreign billionaire-owned corporations and the agencies that should have regulated it, which I hope you're hearing they're not. They're not. So tread carefully. Tread carefully. I am no longer in an autoinflammation feedback loop. I appear to have gotten the infections relatively under control. And I am not here to play. I'm here to slay the disinformation, the bad discharges, and the lack of solutions. And yeah, please, don't even think about it. I mean, if you do pass these rezoning initiatives in a place that I have very clearly stated for the record are not safe, you are adding force multipliers to the potential settlements that people may be hearing they may be entitled to down there. And that is not what we would like our tax dollars to be paid on. So this can be summed up in a small amendment. Just take out the Maui stuff. It's a bad idea on every level, but especially the health of tourists that may consider visiting you down there and the people that live there. And so, I've really been sad not to meet more people of MVA, having worked so hard for 3.5 years. So if anybody would like to meet the only mayoral candidate ever to be an MVA member, and the person that ostensibly has donated the most time and developed the most successful grant applications, well, you know where to find me, Travis at livingmaui.org. And yeah, I love ya. It's just, please don't do that again. It's not like I'm gonna stop finding gaps. So if you could just slow your roll on the retaliation and call me, I'm open to making amends. It's just false narratives about whistleblowers. They will come out, and the truth is coming out right now, and it's been fun, and I care about you, but just this is the worst idea I've ever heard to rezone anything in Malaya. You could say the same for anything in Kihei that discharges into the treatment plant there. And that's also not safe if, say, those dwellings, those STRs, are near Cove Park. So y'all need to do more research. And if you're not talking to me, well, you're making it harder than it needs to be. And I do care about you, but please, waste not our precious and limited legislative time. I'm sure there's a very high number of dollars per minute. Sorry about the flickering. But yeah, there is so much better stuff that you can be spending your time on. Go to livingmaui.org/legislation. There's some good ones in there. The Nani Act can make, I don't know, a foreign billionaire company pay to restore the whole thing. And they can also give us a huge check for all that shoreline stuff, like from the oil companies. Of course, you can't make it retroactive, but you can make it cumulative. So, they will be immune if they stop releasing CO2. But anyways, that's all I have for today. Oh, by the way, I started a YouTube thing. Kids are talking to themselves, recording it, and sending it out. So that's what I just did. This is episode 4 of TravieTV on YouTube. Go check it out. Love ya. Aloha. Bye.